Hello folks, and welcome back to my channel. I am doing yet again another Halloween card because it is the Halloween card making season. This card video, I am making this E.T. inspired card because I love E.T. It's one of my favorite Halloween-ish movies, and I have a friend who I know will love this dearly because she loves the movie just as much as I do. So to start off, I am stamping out two images from the Bicycle Built For You stamp set from Fawn. It is the bicycle and the little dude riding the bicycle. And then I'm taking the How You Bean stamp set and I'm stamping out this little bean shape. Stick with me, I will be kind of using this as like a rough base for my E.T. character that I'm going to draw / build on later. It fits his head shape really well, so that is why I'm using the bean. And then I'm stamping out my images using the jet black Fawn ink because I'm going to be Copic coloring my images for this card. Next, I am taking one of these larger smiley faces from the Christmas Fishes stamp set from Fawn, and I'm just going to use that to stamp the little face onto the bean to kind of make it look like E.T., give him a face. And I chose this one in particular because it is a bit of a bigger face, so it kind of fits the head shape really well. But Fawn has so many of these smiley face images, I'm sure it's not hard to find them in another stamp set perhaps you have, besides this super specific one I have. Next, I am taking a pencil and I'm just going to sketch out the rest of his body. So I'm adding two little nostrils, I'm doing a little triangle under his face to kind of look like he's wrapped up in this blanket, and then I'm just drawing over and around the bean shape, and then I'm just going to give him little shoulders. It's very simple if you aren't too adept at drawing. I promise it's not that difficult, because I'm just kind of tracing around his body and then just sizing him up right. And once I have a good outline in my pencil, I'm going to go over that with a Copic multi-liner, just so that when I'm coloring, the marker doesn't bleed and it holds up to the Copics. For my Copic coloring, I am just starting off with some blues, so I'm using B26 and B24 on the little pants of Elliot, just to make it look like he's wearing jeans. For my reds, I am using R39, R29, and R24 Copic markers, and I'm taking those onto Elliot's sweater, and then I'm also going to be using them for the majority of my bicycle. I tried going back and looking at screenshots from the movie, and I'm pretty sure the bicycle is red, but I also just felt like adding that red somewhere else into the color palette just kind of kept it cohesive, so that is why I made the bicycle red. I really hope that's the color it is in the movie, but I'm not trying for screen accuracy per se, but that is what I'm doing here. For my gray tones, I am using T6 and T4 for the shoes, and for some of the darker gray tones, such as like the bicycle tires and the handles and the pedal and stuff, because it does read a little darker. And I also liked the T range of Copic markers, I guess, because they're more bluish. So they kind of go really nicely with the blue I already have in the jeans, and then all the blue I'm going to have in the sky and everything later. It just kind of keeps it nice and cohesive. It's a great tone of gray. And then for my lighter gray combinations, I'm using T0 and T2, so that's for some of the steel parts of the bicycle. For Elliot's skin tones, I am using E31, E30, and then later on I bring in E50 to kind of blend it out because it was a little dark. And then I am using R20 for the little blushes on the little cheeks, just to add some character and some life to my little dude on the bicycle here. And for the hair color, I'm using E29, E27, and E25, probably my favorite brown combination ever with the Copic markers, and I'm just using that for the hair. I'm not getting super detailed with adding all that texture and stuff. I'm just roughly shading it and adding some dimension, I guess, but I'm not too particular with this in this card. Next, I'm coloring ET, so first I'm going to erase the pencil marks I had drawn on earlier, just to make sure they're not staying around when I'm coloring him. And then I'm using E37 and E35 for his little face here. I tried again to be as screen accurate as possible with like what color he is. I'm also taking E33 as well to kind of lighten him up. But this was a very good ET brown combination, I'd say. He's a very kind of tannish color. And then I'm also using a plethora of different art colors to kind of give him some cheeks. I ended up going darker with the blush because it is a darker skin tone, and I wanted him to have, you know, cute little cheeks. I'm also taking that same T0 and the W00. I just add some very light, effortless shading around his body so he's not stark white. He still has some coloring to him. For the actual card, I have these two giant platform pop-up pieces cut out of this blue cardstock. That will be the base of my platform pop-up. So that is the die I'm using. I'm cutting out two of them because you need to assemble the pop-up box. I also cut out this add-on background piece from the platform pop-up add-on dies. Again, it's the same shade of blue, so they all kind of match. I cut out two of these T-shapes from the platform pop-up die set, one out of black and one out of this forest green color. I cut out a sliver of this black paper with the Little Town border die from Lawn Fawn, and I cut out a sliver of this forest green paper here using the forest border die from Lawn Fawn. I'm going to trim these down to fit those little T-shaped pieces. I also have these two acetate circles. One is about 2.5 inches and one is just this random one. I can't remember how big it is. And then I have these little squares or rectangles cut out that I will be using for the backings behind my houses from the Little Town border die. I also cut out these stars, but I didn't end up using them. To start off the assembly, I guess, of my pop-up box, I'm taking these two larger pieces and I'm just going to be scoring them on all the score lines on the die, as well as removing the little piece in the middle where it cuts out these slashes or slits. So I'm just going ahead and getting a nice crease with my bone folder here, and I'm going to be doing that on both of my pieces. I am also taking those two T-shapes I had cut out earlier, and I'm going to be folding them on these little score lines that are along the bottom. These will be used later to pop up these pieces in the final card. And then I'm also taking this background piece here from the add-on die set that I cut out, and I'm just going to be folding along the score lines that the die includes as well. As I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be trimming down these slivers that I had cut out earlier. So I'm taking the hill border die from the pop-up die set. So I'm just marking out how long they need to be and then how wide it roughly needs to be. And I'm just going to trim those down with my scissors, and I'm marking it with a pencil so I can erase my marks later. But, you know, the die set doesn't come with these already, you know, cut to size to fit the pop-up box die, but it's perfectly fine because you can go ahead and trim off and, you know, use what you want to use. So that is what I am doing here. And now I'm going to go ahead and kind of use these post-it notes here to mask off certain areas of the card. So I'm only wanting to ink up the top portion of the card because I want this to look like ground and not like a blue sky. So I'm marking or using these post-its to kind of block off the other segments of this card. So I just want this little trapezoid shape, I guess, with the hole in the center. And so I'm using Distress ink in Black Soot and Distress Oxide in Pine Needles, and I'm just going to be making this kind of look like I guess a forest ground. So it's very simple. I'm just going in with some pine needles in the center, and then I'm going to be using some of the black soot around the edges to spookify it, make it look like it's, you know, spooky nighttime, Halloweenish, I guess. And then in this way it also kind of matches the green cardstock I had cut out earlier, and I'm going to be repeating this process on both of my pieces. So I'm still masking and inking again. I am taking that same post-it note and I'm going to be masking off the rest of my card. I'm only wanting to apply ink to this little strip here where the scalloped edge is, because this is going to be the outside of my box, and that is where I want my little star stencils to go. So I'm taking the Lots of Stars background stencils from Fawn, I'm putting it on this metal crafting sheet, and I'm going to hold my stencil down with these magnets so it doesn't move around and so I don't get any shifting and the stencil comes out really clean. I'm going to be stenciling using Chip Sapphire Distress ink and this little brush here. I find these brushes are better than the foam daubers. I like the daubers for big backgrounds, but these brushes get into all the nooks and crannies and they don't shed because they're not made out of foam. So it just adds all that detail and it captures all that detail, and these stars have so many points, it's the better option. So I'm going ahead and I'm just inking up my little stars here with one of the background stencils. I'm going to remove it and I'm going to take the next stencil and line it up. These stencils stack on top of each other to fill like an entire background. So you have to kind of layer them in a certain way, so I'm just using my grid mat to help me with that. Once I have this next stencil where I want it to be, I'm going to again ink it up using that same Chip Sapphire ink and the same little brush here. And I'm going to be repeating this process on both of my pieces. And I just wasn't finished with this. You can certainly stop at this point. I think the stars look great, but I wanted to add more. So again, I'm layering these stencils. I'm adding this mask. I would add your mask underneath the stencil. Now that I'm watching this back, I don't know why I chose to do this, but it worked all the same. And then I'm going to be taking some Glimmer Paste. This is the Nuvo Glimmer Paste in Silver Gem, and I'm taking a clean little spatula. And I'm going to be going and adding this paste over top of my stencil to add sparkles to my stars. So I realigned my stencil with the stars I had already inked. So this is going to be going on top of the stars that are already there. And I'm going to make them a little sparkly because I thought, hey, a little sparkle never hurt nobody. Next, I am taking this background piece that I had cut out earlier and this mountain stencil from Fawn. I'm going to line it up where I want my mountains to go, and I'm going to be inking this with black soot ink from Fawn. This is just to add like that forest backdrop, I guess, set the scene from my card here, because in the film they kind of like fly in the forest and they fly on their bikes because of the power of friendship. But I just kind of wanted to, again, emulate the movie scene as best as I could. So I thought adding some mountains in this black color, it wouldn't be too distracting, but it would still add some, oomph to my card, a little wow factor. And then, again, it just wasn't enough with me, so I'm taking the same Starry Sky stencil, and I'm going to be lining up my stencil, and then I'm going to be inking that again with the same Chip Sapphire ink, just to add a couple stars to my sky so it looks like the nighttime and it's kind of cohesive, because these stars will match the ones on the bottom of my card, and it'll just be a nice little background for my little scene here. Next, I am taking this circle I had cut out earlier. I just measured it. It's 2¼ inches in diameter, and it's cut out of just some white cardstock. And I'm taking some of this speckled egg Distress Oxide ink, and I'm going to add like a base wash to my moon here. I'm trying to be as even as possible, but it is a moon, so it doesn't exactly have to be the most even. And then I am taking this stone stencil from Honeybee Stamps, Lawn Fawn just released a moon stencil, but at the time of me filming this, I did not have my hands on it. So you could go ahead and use other moon stencils for this, but I'm using this stone stencil because it has, you know, this crater, I guess, effect. It's all rounded shapes. So I'm going ahead and just adding more of this speckled egg on top of my stencil, just to add these grooves and holes in my moon. And because I, took the stencil off, I kind of realized my craters were a little stark, or they stood out a lot. So I'm taking some of this Hickory Smoke Distress Oxide ink, I'm adding some around the edges just to darken this one side of the moon, and I'm also using some of that, again, that speckled egg, just to kind of tone it down a little, remove some of the starkness and the contrast. I am also going ahead and splattering my moon with some clean water on a clean paintbrush, and I'm going to dab that off to remove some of the ink, just to add more texture and stuff to my moon, because a little texture never hurt. And here I am taking this little village border die that I had cut earlier. I'm going to add some glue around the windows, and I'm going to be gluing on these tiny little rectangles I had cut out of some silver sparkle cardstock. I felt like the silver sparkle cardstock would match some of the sparkle I had around on my little stars here, so that is why I went with that in particular. And I'm just going to add these little rectangles behind the windows and stuff, so it looks like there's little people in my little houses and that their lights are on and it's nighttime, and that is what I'm doing. I'm going to let those go ahead and dry before I move on. With all my houses lit up from the inside, I'm going to go ahead and add some liquid glue to this top line on the T-shape I had cut out earlier of the same black cardstock, and I'm going to glue my little border onto the T-shape, just lining those up. And I'm going to be doing the same with my forest green / forest hill piece that I have here. So I'm just using liquid glue for this. You can use tape. I would recommend using tape, but I didn't have the right thickness, so I just went and made do with the liquid glue. But again, I'm just gluing this onto the upper line on the T. I want to let those dry as best as possible. I'm also trimming off excess here because I just didn't measure correctly, I guess, when I initially measured these and trimmed these down. So yeah. Next, I'm taking some 1/4 inch tape here. I'm going to add that to the bottom little folding piece on my T-shape. I'm going to fish my T-shape through the little slit in the trapezoid. I'm going to remove the backing and stick it down, folding, the flap down. Next, I'm also adding some tape to that little flap on the trapezoid. I'm going to fold that upwards and then, adhere it with the sticky side down onto the back side of my little box here. And I am repeating the same process of, fishing my T through and sticking it down and kind of roughly assembling these platform pop-ups onto my other one I had cut out earlier. So I'm doing this on both of these shapes. This is so hard to describe. I think it's just a little easier to watch me do it, but yeah. I'm also adding some of that 1/4 inch tape to the tabs that are on the sides where the stars are, and I'll be just adhering these two pieces together. I'm not fully assembling my platform pop-up yet. I'm just kind of sticking these two tabs together so I have one strip with my platform pop-up. Next, I am taking some more of that tape and I'm just going to adhere it to one side of these little rectangles on, I guess, the back side, the center seam of my platform pop-up. And I'm going to adhere this little acetate circle that is 3 1/4 inches. I'm going to add more tape on top of the acetate circle. I'm going to remove the backing paper, and then I'm going to fold this thing like a sandwich and have my two sides kiss to fully put together my platform pop-up. I'm also going to remove the tape on the tab where the stars are, so it is fully a platform pop-up, and that is kind of what it looks like. I'm going to add some more decorations, but I love making these. They're just so stinking cool, and I swear I don't do it justice, but they are very easy to put together. I'm also running a thin line of glue along the back side of my little backdrop piece from the add-ons. I'm just going to adhere that to where the scalloped edge is, because the scalloped edge is kind of raised, so I can go ahead and glue this little scene setting piece to my background. And I'm going to use some of these tweezers here just to make sure I have a strong hold. Again, I would recommend probably using a tape, but I didn't have a tape thin enough, so I just made do with what I have. I'm taking that same Lawn Fawn liquid glue pen and I'm just going to assemble, I guess, the bicycle, the main focal point of my card. So I'm taking my little Elliot, I'm going to add some glue on top of his hands and then behind him where his butt and legs are, so I can have him on top of the bicycle and then have the handlebars on top of his hands so it looks like he's riding the bike. I'm also going to add some glue onto my ET and layer him behind the bicycle so he kind of fits nice and snug in that basket. And it's just so cute. I just love how cute he is. It looks really like ET. I'm quite happy with how it came out. And I'm going to let those guys dry before I move on. I'm also going to add some detail with my gel pens because it's easier to do this now than to do it while they're on the platform pop-ups. I learned that the hard way. But I'm using my gel pen to clean up my lines. I'm going to add some black glaze pen to eyes so that it looks like ET has some nice shiny eyes. And I'm also using this clear glitter gel pen from Jelly Roll just to add some glitter details to all the metal and just make my character shine in the moonlight. Next, I am taking that same liquid glue and I'm going to add some glue selectively to certain portions of my ET bicycle guy here, and then I'm just going to go ahead and glue that onto my moon. I don't have him fully covering the moon, just a little bit, just so it looks like, you know, he's floating up and kind of skirting across the sky. And then I'm going to hold that down with an acrylic block and let it completely dry before I go ahead and glue him on to the platform pop-up. So here I'm just kind of guesstimating where I want him to go. I'm going to go ahead and add some of that tape behind certain portions of the moon here, just along the very bottom, really. And then I'm going to remove the backing and adhere it to the acetate circle so it looks like he's floating in the sky. I am also flattening my platform pop-up, and then I'm going to go ahead and stamp my handmade by little stamp here onto the very bottom, so when I fold this card and mail it, you will see it, and then it doesn't really obstruct any of the actual card because it's on the bottom. And I felt like, I don't know if anyone has, you know, talked about that, but I felt like that was kind of a cool little tip for people who are making these kinds of cards. Like, you can still put the little handmade by stamps somewhere, you just gotta hide it really well. And then I had cut out this banner out of some white cardstock. It is a Lawn Fawn simple everyday banner die, I believe. It's the medium size. And I'm just stamping out Happy Halloween onto the banner. This card could be like any kind of card. It could be a thank you, a hello. I think a great one would be like a friendship kind of card, because E.T. is just such a heartwarming movie about like being friends and stuff like that. But for the card I am making, I decided to make it a Halloween card because it is the Halloween season, and I mean, like, they go trick-or-treating in the movie and stuff, so I felt like it's kind of a Halloween movie, but it's also one of my favorite movies regardless of the season. But I'm gluing down my little banner. I'm layering it on top of a black one just to add some dimension, and I'm sticking that down with just a tape runner, and that's the final card. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to, feel free to subscribe, comment, share, it means so much, and follow me on Instagram. Thank you, and I'll see you later.